Good evening everyone and welcome to tonight's screening of the Voice of Hind Rajab, hosted by the Gaza Project. I'd like to begin by welcoming you all with the Islamic greeting of peace, which is Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, which translates to mean simply, may the peace and blessings of Allah, God, be upon you all. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where we gather today, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. We pay our respects to the elders past and present, and we extend our respect to anyone in the audience who may be of Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander heritage background, and thank you for being with us. We also have amazing panelists, and we've had amazing panelists every single night that share their experiences, share their stories, and share some personal touching moments where they set the scene for the film. So I'd like to start by thanking Sister Assala and Dr. Peter for being with us as panelists tonight. I also want to thank every one of you for joining us, because you're literally the reason why these things exist. Literally. If there weren't people that care about humanity, care about justice, then these events don't go anywhere, they don't mean anything, we'll be talking to an empty room. So honestly, round of applause to you. This film that we're going to be watching tonight has been nominated for an Oscar just last week. It's also a film, I think that deserves a round of applause as well, I agree. It's also a film that has the longest standing ovation in history, 23 minutes 50 seconds at Venice Film Festival. This is unheard of, guys. So of course it's going to be a film that's touching and emotional. I want every single one of you to be vulnerable. Just be yourself, right? Soak in the emotions, let it hit home, let it hurt, because you know what? It does hurt. And it's truth, it's not fictional, it's reality. This is a story of one beautiful young girl that is representing thousands and thousands and thousands of others just like her, whose stories didn't get told. But that's okay, because through honoring Hind Rajab, we are honoring every single child that lost their life in this genocide.
انت تغطيه وما تحاول ما تنزفيش، يعني حاولي انك تسكري الجرم.
تمام، السيارة جاية.
الو طوارئ الهلال الاحمر رام الله الضفة الغربية، عمر معك تفضل. الو شو اسمك انت؟
انا نجد حمادة. كنا دم امام بيتي. ماما غيرت حالي.
مهدي، احتمال احتاج سيارة اسعاف.
عمر حبيبي احنا مجبرين نأمن له مسلك آمن.
إذا ما فيش معها وقت.
شايف هدول يا شاب؟ خسرناهم كلهم.
8 دقايق ممكن تكلفهم حياتهم إذا ما عملناش التنسيق وعمار.
They are shooting at a car with a little girl inside. Can you imagine that? So do something. انت في التمهيدي؟ هند انا جايين ناخدك احنا.
كل دم امام بيتي. انا بكون موجودة عندي.
بس لسه في فضا، لسه معنا وقت.
My name is Nidal. I am one of the co-founders of the Gaza Project. They said the old will die and the young will forget. My father Muhammad, born in 1935 in the village of Ain Karim, today part of Jerusalem. My village is home to the oldest church in the world that predates Jesus alayhi salam. That is the Church of John the Baptist alayhi salam. You see, John's mother, Elizabeth, she lived in my village. And while she was pregnant with John alayhi salam, her sister, Virgin Mary, the mother of Jesus alayhi salam, came to visit his sister. And Virgin Mary blessed a spring in my village, and she drank from that water, from that spring. And we believe it is blessed and flowing till today with bliss. My grandfather resisted the occupation in the 1930s and 40s. My father resisted the occupation in the 1960s and 70s in diaspora. And I have been resisting since my teen years. We marched, we cried, we celebrated, but we always had a dream of Palestine free of violence, a Palestine free of injustice, free of appetite, free of occupation. We dream of one Palestine for all, where all are equal and all are united. My grandfather died in 1976. My father died in 1997. So yes, the old did die, but the young will never forget. The Gaza Project was born from the same inheritance, not from politics, not from ideology, but from refusal. A refusal to accept that suffering is normal. A refusal to let memory become passive. A refusal to let stories like Hind's be analyzed, archived, and then just forgotten. We created the Gaza Project because remembrance on its own is not enough. If memory does not lead to responsibility, it becomes performance. And if responsibility does not lead to action, it becomes silence. Hind did not forget, and neither will we. Free Palestine.
I'd now like to move on to our first panelist, our brother Peter Slezak. Peter is a professor of philosophy. Peter is our brother. He is from Jewish background. So I'd like to pass the floor to Peter. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I want to start by saying it's a great privilege to join you and to say a few words on an occasion like this. The heartbreaking, really harrowing story of Hind Rajab is not an isolated event, and we need to understand that it's not just an event carried out by a couple of rogue individuals. Incidents like the murder of Hind and her family is the norm, as we all know, part of a grotesque pattern. The atrocities concerning Hind Rajab are part of really the devastation on an unprecedented scale that we've all seen on our phones and screens for 2 years. And as we've seen, Gaza looks like Hiroshima after the atom bomb. In fact, 2 days ago, just recently, the New England Journal of Medicine described the US-sponsored Israeli attacks on Gaza as, I quote, one of the most severe and indiscriminate uses of military violence against the civilian population in recent times. Now, to understand all this, in the few minutes I've got, I want to consider three questions, briefly. The first is, what does the Hind Rajab atrocity and the Gaza horror tell us about Israel? We need to understand that, because I think people don't really understand it very well. The second question I want to think about is what it tells us about the Jewish community and its leadership, and I'm in a particularly, unfortunately, good position to talk about that, which is difficult but important also to understand briefly. And of course, the other question I want to talk about is what does this all tell us about us, and I mean in Australia. So let me say something about Israel. I'm going to just quote some Israeli journalists and others who know what they're talking about. For example, Gideon Levy, the journalist for Haaretz. He describes Israel as a rogue state, breaking international laws, ignoring UN resolutions, killing thousands of civilians with impunity. He describes the radicalization of Israeli society, in which many Israelis are, perhaps most actually, are in denial about the actions taken in their name, and have, he says, lost all humanity. In fact, you may be aware there's been surveys which show that something like 90% of Israelis, they approve of what their government has done in Gaza, and a large proportion of those don't think that they've gone far enough. Just think about what that means. Another person that I want to mention to help us understand this is a Jewish historian, perhaps one of the most important, is Norman Finkelstein, the American historian. He describes Israel as a delusional lunatic state. These are not just throwaway rude words. These are meant seriously and literally to give you some idea of what we're up against and what you can't really figure out easily from the mainstream media. Finkelstein is an amazing scholar, and through his extensive writings, he's recorded the long, sordid history of disproportionate military actions by Israel, going back to the horrors of Lebanon in 1982 and ever since. Another person that I want to mention briefly is the Israeli woman Nurit El-Hanan. Some of you may know her story. I can't avoid mentioning that her daughter was blown up in a suicide bomb. And she spoke so movingly about it. I have to depart from my notes from it and what she said when they came to talk to her. Her family were royalty in Israel. And she said, when they wanted to take revenge on the Palestinians, she said two things which really choke you up. She said, firstly, I don't want to do to another mother what I've suffered. We don't want to make another mother feel this tragedy. And she secondly said, this is our fault. Can you imagine a mother in the moment of her greatest grief having the insight to be able to say that? Well, she's a very important educator in Israel. And she's written on the Israeli education system, which she points out as full of racist, demeaning stereotypes about Arabs and Palestinians. And in particular, she mentions something which you may not be aware of, the racist incitement by rabbis whose books teach hate and dehumanizing racist stereotypes, and they're distributed to soldiers before they go into Gaza. This helps explain the horrors that we've all seen. And finally, one other figure is worth mentioning. Moshe Alon was a former Israeli defense minister. And he says the ideology of Jewish supremacy, which he uses that word, has become dominant in Israel. And he says, he actually uses the words, it's become reminiscent of Nazi race theory. This used to be inexpressible. He used not to be able to make those analogies. But now he says, I'm quoting, the ideology of Jewish supremacy has become dominant in the government of Israel, and it's reminiscent of Nazi race theory. This is starting to give you some idea of what is going on in Israel. Let me move to another point. I wanted to talk also about what all of this tells us about the Zionist Jewish community and its leadership. This is something which, I know intimately because I grew up in the Jewish community here, and I still mix to the extent that I'm capable of it. I suffer a certain amount of abuse, as you can imagine. The mainstream Jewish community has been actually ignoring or indifferent to Gaza since October 7. It's very hard to understand this, but that's a sad and depressing reality. Even worse still, the leaders and commentators, who are not just silent about Gaza, are justifying it, as you might be aware, as self-defense. This is pathological to a degree that's very hard to understand. They've persuaded the Albanese government, of course, to embrace a McCarthy-style campaign which conflates justified criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism. As you all know, we're facing this tsunami of hysterical attacks on mostly fake anti-Semitism, or at least it's not anti-Semitism, but justified anger about what Israel is doing and what the Jews are supporting. That's why, by the way, I have to mention the most important development in recent times of the Anti-Zionist Jewish Council of Australia. They're a very important development which helps to counter this tendency that I'm talking about. And finally, I want to just mention, thirdly, what all of this tells us about us. Prime Minister Albanese and Penny Wong are deeply complicit in the Israeli genocide. In fact, of course, you'd be aware, they've been referred to the International Criminal Court, the ICC. There's a lot to say about that, and mainly it's by their support for a genocide, which is actually an offence under the rules of the ICC. It's by their conspicuous, consistent silence, effectively for 2 years, besides a couple of meaningless, inadequate token gestures. So finally, what I want to say is that we're seeing in all of this the normalisation of Israel's atrocities, which has allowed the criminality of the Zionist project for more than 70 years, of course. And finally, in her most recent report, the UN Special Rapporteur, Francesca Albanese, she says that without this kind of diplomatic cover from states like Australia, Israel would not have been able to commit the genocide and such tragedies as the murder of Hind Rajab. Free Palestine. Thank you.
Thank you you so much, Dr. Peter. And it's interesting that you mentioned the Jewish Council of Australia. We actually had, it was yesterday, Bart Steinman, one of the executive members. He was one of our panelists here. And I love seeing that, and I'm so glad we're able to pull that off, because it's the exact message that we've been trying to portray forever, that Muslims, Christians, Jews can live alongside, coordinate, cooperate, work and do everything we can with harmony if people just care and love one another. Right? So thank you so much for sharing that beautiful message. I'd now like to pass on to Sister Assala Sayara. Sister Assala is a community activist. She's also Palestinian by heritage and descent, so I'd like to call upon Sister Assala.
Thank you. Free, free. Free, free. Wow, this feels very emotional for me. It's been a while. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Peace be upon you all. Good evening. For those who don't know me, allow me to introduce myself in my mother's tongue, the tongue that the colonizers also want to occupy. أنا اسمي أصالة عايد محمد عبد المحسن سيارة. I'm originally from the southwest of Hebron, Al-Khalil, and I'm honored to be born in the city of Bethlehem, Palestine. I, as the daughter of the Canaanites, acknowledge that I am standing on stolen land. The land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I pay my deepest respects to the elders past, present and emerging. This land was and will always be the land of Aboriginal people. And I just want to say that this is not just a verbal acknowledgement. This is a sincere recognition to the implications of colonization, and that the Palestinian struggle towards liberation is not separate to the struggle of Aboriginal and the Torres Strait Islander people. Our struggle is one. From Akka to Jenin to Jaffa to Haifa to Gaza to Ramallah and to Nablus are cities that still stand today. They are cities that have borne to witness the steps of forced, displaced Palestinians. They are cities that have borne to witness the cries of Palestinian mothers for their sons and daughters that have been martyred. They are the cities that have borne to witness the yearning of parents for their illegally detained sons and daughters in illegal Israeli prisons. These are not just fragments of history. These are lived realities that have been documented and shared through testimony. And this takes me to why we're here and the importance of documentation. We are not just an audience. You are not just an audience. We are part of a global movement that stands for a just cause. Tell yourself that you are standing for a just cause, that cause for liberation, justice and humanity, not just for Palestinian people, but for all oppressed people. You are not just an audience. We are not just an audience. We are witnesses. We are witnesses, and I say this with heaviness. We are witnesses to a genocide. We are witnesses to a film that turns statistics into a lived human reality. We are witnesses to a film that brings a voice that has haunted the conscience of humanity. Whether it's a film of Hind Rajab, whether it's a book, whether it's any form of documentation, it's a testimony. It's a testimony against those who saw and who decided to ignore. It's a testimony about a system that is designed to kill, to erase, and to colonize. It is a testimony to voices like the voice of Hind Rajab, of Anqidhuni, help me, save me, that no child should ever say. But it is a testimony that exposes the propaganda of a regime. It is a testimony that exposes that the killer is part of a system, that the killer is celebrated, and the person that wants to help is criminalized, because the Israeli regime defines what legalized criminality is. Keep that in your books. What legalized criminality is. And that's what we're seeing here today. And I'm going to end it on this. For decades, we Palestinians have been told to explain ourselves, to explain why are we grieving? Why do we have a right to exist? Why do we have a right to resist? All forms of documentation refuse that demand, just the way that this film refuses that demand. All forms of documentation make you feel. Let's feel. We have to feel. As you cry, feel. As you chant, feel. As you walk, feel. Feel. Because I'd be worried if we're not feeling. That's what makes us different. I'd be worried. Feel. But what do we do with this feeling? We must, and I say this, we must channel it. We must channel it into service and into action. Because the day that we stop our action is the day that we've given up. And let me tell you, I learned from my people that giving up is never the answer. We don't give it up. And as we don't give up, we say, we will not forget. And we will not forgive. We will not forget the ice cream trucks that were filled with bodies of children. We will not forget the parents who held plastic bags with the parts of their children. And we will not forgive. Repeat after me if you feel comfortable to do so. We will not forget. We will not forgive. We are truth tellers. We are truth tellers.